China just made a game-changing move in the Pacific, one that could shift global power. It signed a deal with the Cook Islands, a tiny nation of just 17,000 people. But here's the catch. They now have to consult Beijing before making international decisions. This isn't just about money, it's about control. Why does this matter? Because the Cook Islands sit on one of the world's most critical shipping routes, connecting the US, Australia, and Asia. If China tightens its grip here, it could impact global trade, military logistics, and even undersea internet cables that keep the world online. And this is just the beginning. China has already invested over $2.3 billion in Pacific nations, and this deal is a clear signal. Beijing is playing the long game, while the US and its allies scramble to respond. So, is China outmaneuvering the West? Or is it time for a major pushback? Let's break it all down. Section 1. The Cook Islands Deal. What just happened? So, here's the deal, literally. China recently signed a controversial agreement with the Cook Islands, a tiny island nation in the Pacific with a population of just 17,000 people. In exchange for an initial £2 million, $2.5 million USD, in funding, the Cook Islands must now consult China before participating in international meetings. That means before they make statements, vote on policies, or sign agreements, they need Beijing's approval. This move is unprecedented. While China has provided financial aid to Pacific nations before, this is the first time a nation is explicitly required to coordinate with Beijing on global affairs. And it's not just about money. This is a direct challenge to Western influence in the region. Section 2. Why is China doing this? China's expansion into the Pacific isn't random. It's a calculated strategy driven by long-term geopolitical and economic interests. Since 2010, China has poured over $2.3 billion into Pacific Island nations, funding more than 100 infrastructure projects, including roads, government buildings, and critical facilities. This investment is part of a broader push to establish influence in the region. In 2022, China attempted to secure a region-wide security pact with 10 Pacific Island nations, but the effort failed due to strong opposition from Australia and the US. Now, instead of pursuing a large-scale agreement, China is shifting to a more targeted approach, gaining control over individual nations one by one. The Cook Islands deal is a prime example of this strategy. The strategic significance of the Cook Islands cannot be overlooked. Positioned in the middle of a crucial shipping route connecting the US, Australia, and Asia, this tiny nation sits at the crossroads of global trade. If China establishes a foothold there, it could exert influence over key maritime logistics, military operations, and even undersea internet cables that power global communications. Section 3. How does this impact the US and Europe? For the United States, China's growing presence in the Pacific presents a direct national security threat. The Cook Islands are located in waters regularly patrolled by U.S. Navy fleets, making China's influence in the region a challenge to American dominance. If Beijing gains control over critical shipping routes, it could have severe economic consequences. Around 30% of global maritime trade passes through the Pacific, and any disruption could drive up costs for American businesses, slow down supply chains, and create instability in global markets. For Europe, the implications are just as serious. The European Union has been working to build stronger ties with Pacific nations, providing 300 million euros, $325 million US, in aid in recent years. However, if China gains the power to dictate policies in these countries, it could directly impact trade agreements, diplomatic relations, and military alliances. European economies rely heavily on stability in the Indo-Pacific. More than 40% of Europe's trade flows through the region, making any disruption a significant risk. The UK and France maintain military bases in the Pacific, and shifting political alliances could put those assets in jeopardy. Meanwhile, Germany, as the EU's largest economy, has a staggering 200 billion euros, $216 billion US, in trade exposure to the Pacific. China's expanding influence in the region is not just about one small island nation. It's a direct challenge to Western economic and security interests, marking a shift in global power dynamics. Section 4. What's the bigger picture? This growing influence in the Pacific is part of a much larger pattern. China has been strategically expanding its reach across multiple continents, using financial leverage to secure key resources and infrastructure. In Africa, China has lent over $153 billion to various nations since 2000, gaining access to minerals, oil, and large-scale infrastructure projects. In South America, Chinese investment has surpassed $130 billion, primarily in energy and transportation, giving Beijing an increasingly strong foothold in the region's resource markets. Even Europe itself has not been immune to Chinese expansion. Beijing owns stakes in major European ports, including Piraeus in Greece and Hamburg in Germany, positioning itself as a key player in Europe's trade network. This is all part of China's larger Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure and investment strategy that now spans over 140 countries. This isn't just about securing economic advantages, it's about reshaping the world order. By embedding itself in key economic and geopolitical centers, China is positioning itself to rewrite international rules in its favor, challenging the dominance of Western nations and reshaping the balance of global power. Section 5. What can the U.S. and Europe do? The United States and its allies cannot afford to remain passive as China expands its influence in the Pacific. In response, the U.S. has intensified its naval operations in the region, while Australia has committed to a significant expansion of its defense budget, planning to invest $368 billion Australian dollars, $240 billion US dollars, over the next decade. These efforts are aimed at reinforcing military presence and countering China's strategic positioning. On the economic front, the European Union is advancing its Global Gateway project, a €300 billion, 325 billion USD initiative designed to serve as a counterweight to China's Belt and Road Initiative. This program focuses on developing infrastructure and providing financial support to nations that might otherwise turn to Beijing for investment. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts are also ramping up. The US and the UK have been actively working to strengthen ties with Pacific nations by offering alternative funding opportunities and security agreements, aiming to provide these countries with viable options beyond China's financial and political reach. Despite these measures, a crucial question remains: will this be enough? China has deep financial resources and a long-term vision, strategically executing a game of patience. While Western nations are now racing to counter its influence, Beijing has been steadily laying the groundwork for years. The competition for dominance in the Pacific is not just a short-term conflict. It is a prolonged geopolitical struggle that will shape the future balance of power. Conclusion. The takeaway. The impact of China's Pacific expansion extends far beyond the region itself, influencing global stability, economic markets, and security dynamics. For those in the United States, this is a direct matter of national security, affecting trade, military operations, and even economic growth. In Europe, the challenge lies in maintaining a stable international order and ensuring that Beijing does not reshape the rules of global diplomacy to serve its own interests. However, this issue is not confined to just the US and Europe. Regardless of where you are in the world, the effects of geopolitical power struggles are unavoidable. They dictate the flow of trade, determine security alliances, and even impact critical infrastructure such as internet access and shipping routes. China's growing presence in the Pacific is not just about one country gaining more influence. It represents a global shift in power with far-reaching consequences. And if history has shown us anything, it is that such power shifts never occur without significant ripple effects. So, what do you think? Should the US and Europe take stronger action to counter China's expansion, or is Beijing simply outmaneuvering its rivals? Let's discuss it in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the world's most important geopolitical developments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.